Hi everybody, I'm Dawn. Welcome back to my series, The Genesis Project. Sorry, this video has taken me almost 2 weeks to record and post. This will be my last video in this series, unless the good Lord decides to give me a new message to talk about. This video and this part of my story is the one with the biggest impact. The most pain I have ever felt in my entire life. And there may be times during this that I may cry. I apologize. Purposely didn't wear any makeup or do anything extra because while I'm more at peace with this, there are still moments and memories that I have that may just hit the wrong way. And cause a little bit of a breakdown. But I know that my story could help somebody else out there. So I'm going to put my fear in God and have Him give me His peace and strength to get through this. So stick with me. And I hope this helps somebody. So picking up from our last video, I kind of talked about how me and my husband had gotten back together, about how, we decided to, move back in. So we did that. And it wasn't easy because we were both still stuck in our old ways, even though we had gotten saved and we were trying to follow, Jesus' teachings and build this life back, put it back together, basically piece by piece. One thing is when we did decide to work everything out, we each had one non-negotiable request from each other. For my husband, he wanted me to quit smoking. I had been smoking since I was 15, so there's a good 20 years worth of smoking there. But he wanted me to quit. And my non-negotiable request was to have another baby. In July of 2017, we were about to go on a missions trip to Honduras with our church at the time. One thing that my husband and pastor kind of made abundantly clear was that there would be no smoking. Because we were staying on the hosting pastor's compound and, there would be no access to it. And, so basically there was no smoking on this 7-day trip. Leading up to this trip, and from the time my husband first made the request for me to quit smoking, he tried every possible way you could think of to get me to quit. He felt like he was the one that had to get me to quit. And I kept telling him, look, there's nothing you can do that can force me to quit smoking. I have to want to do it for myself. Right before that trip, I remember praying and having a conversation with God, and He told me, you can do it. It's time to quit. Literally, I quit cold turkey right before that trip. 3 days prior, I got rid of my last pack of cigarettes, and I never picked up another one. To this day, I have never picked up another cigarette. So I quit smoking for that trip. So we had a phenomenal trip. We were able to, hand out reading glasses for people, Bibles, flip-flops, food for the pastors and their congregations that lived up in the mountains in Honduras. So to say it was a successful, awesome trip would be an understatement. But we came back, and that was probably around towards the end of July we had gone. And then August came around, and finally, my husband kept kind of giving me weird glances throughout this time period, like, till finally I was like, what's going on? And he's like, you really quit smoking? And I'm like, yeah, I told you, I quit. And he's like, wow. So he was pretty surprised, but I think he finally accepted the fact that I wasn't going to pick up another cigarette at that point. the following month, in August of 2017, my husband had come to me and told me that he had a dream, that we were in our old house, and I was walking around in our living room, and he comes up to me in this dream and he says, we should have a baby. And I look at him strangely and I'm like, but we already did. And he told me he looked down on the floor and he sees a little baby girl crawling on the floor with curly blonde hair. So after we talked about that, he agreed, okay, let's try to have another baby. I was pumped, by the way, stoked. September 2017, so about a month later, found out I was pregnant. Gone off birth control. A couple weeks later, boom, pregnant. I always wanted my kids to be at least 3 years age difference. My siblings and I are 5 and 6 years apart, respectively. So I always felt that 3 years being a little bit closer, but not right on top stair stepping it, would be, you know, a good way for them to kind of be closer, but not as distant and separated as me and my siblings were. I waited 10 years to get pregnant again, to have that third child. I always wanted another one, but my husband was never open to it. And I refused to just go off birth control and be like, oh, whoops. I wanted it to be something that he and I agreed to do. So yeah, I found out my daughter was 12 at the time. My son had just turned 16. So 10 years of waiting to have another baby, and finally it happened. On January 25th, 2018, we announced on Facebook that we were expecting. It was the cutest, sweetest little post ever. My husband was standing behind me at our old house, and you couldn't see from it was shot from shoulder to just below the belly. And he had his hands in a heart, you know, the little cute little heart shape you do. Heart shape around my stomach that was slightly, you know, showing at that point. And I held a chalkboard, and on that chalkboard was a scripture of 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 27. And it says, "For this child we have prayed." And that was our expecting announcement. It was in black and white. It was a beautiful photo. Very simple, very well done. I can thank my daughter for that. She edited and, you know, did the cool filters of the black and white and all that. So it was really nice. A few days after that, we found out what we were having, a girl. Again, we announced what the baby was going to be on Facebook with another adorably cute picture that my daughter also took and edited. There was 2 pics on this video, and any of you that, you know, have me, you can look on Facebook. I have these pictures posted there as well for reference. So both the pictures were in black and white. However, the top picture was my husband's and my hands on my belly and the little heart. And I had on like a white t-shirt, and there was a caption that said, "It's a ... And then it cuts to the bottom picture, which also was in black and white, with the exception of handprints on my stomach in the shape of the heart. And then we're kind of holding our hands open, and it says, "A girl." We decided to name her Genesis Aurora German. We chose the name Genesis because Genesis means new beginnings. And we felt that that is what God gave us with this new baby. It was a new beginning for us as a family. The dynamics would change, roles would change. So it was a pretty big moment. My husband and I and our families were ecstatic. We had nothing left over from when our kids were little. Again, at this point, they're 13 and 16, so there was no baby stuff left in the house. So we had to get everything all over again. We're talking, cribs, clothes, the baby wash that smells amazing, all the cute little girly baby clothes and the little, headbands with the bobos. That was my thing. She had to have hundreds of bobos for her hair. And it had to be pink because I love the color pink anyway. So I was ecstatic. In March 14th of 2018, my sister-in-law awesomely threw together a huge baby shower at the Sparrows Point Country Club. And we invited everybody. I mean, all of our friends, family, people that we, were leaders with at church. I mean, it was well over like 50, 60 people. And we got everything you could possibly need for a new baby. We had so many clothes, toys, the gift cards alone and the money donations, all of that added up to where we were able to buy her a brand new crib, a dresser, decorations for her room, and any other like furniture. We literally did not have to buy anything for this baby. We got it all at this baby shower. So that was an enormous blessing. Over the next few years, we started, putting together her room. I took up the painting. I did, 3 gray walls, and then one really cute pink one. And it had a banner that said, welcome. We put her crib up and set up everything, washed the clothes, put them away. We even got a bassinet for our room and stacked it with, wipes and diapers and everything because we wanted her to stay with us for the first couple of weeks. Because for the first time ever, with me not smoking, and I had also switched my anxiety medication at the time, which was to make it safe to get pregnant. I was actually going to breastfeed. So I was extremely excited for that because I was not able to breastfeed my other 2 kids because unfortunately I smoked during those 2 pregnancies. So we were pretty pumped up, pretty ecstatic. During this preparation, we were part of the leadership group at our church for the young adults. One of my fondest memories, I have to say, is every Thursday night when we had service, during worship in the service, Genesis would go crazy in my stomach. She would be moving and kicking and just stretching and just so much movement. And it was only during worship. And that's when I knew that little girl was going to be special. On Thursday, April 26th, regular Thursday, we were going to service. I noticed that, she was kind of calm. She wasn't really moving or anything. I had noticed earlier in the day that she wasn't moving around a lot. I didn't really think anything of it. Both my other 2 kids, when I got closer to the end of my pregnancies, also were, not as active as some doctors claim that they're supposed to be. I always attributed it to them running out of space. At this point, I was 35 weeks, and yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of room for little lady to move around in, so I didn't think anything of it. The next day, April 27th, during one of the worst, oh no, wrong date. April 27th, I had my bi-weekly OB appointment. They actually, mind you, at this time, I was only, 35, 30, I think it was 36. I had to go to the doctor every 2 weeks for scans because they considered me a geriatric pregnancy because I was pregnant over the age of 35. Talk about feeling old. That was terrible. But it was during that bi-weekly appointment, I remember going And I hadn't really felt her move a lot. Again, I don't think I even felt her move at all at that point. And I let the technician know, hey, you know, she hasn't really been moving. I did eat this morning, but she's just been really quiet or whatever. And they reassured me, okay, you know, it's fine. You're getting bigger. You know, it's towards the end. They don't move as much. You might not feel it as much. So so we went with it. I know I keep looking down, but I'm looking at my notes because I don't want to miss anything. But once I get to the main point, then I'll just be kind of freestyling from there. I didn't want to have to write everything out. So I remember laying on the bed and the technician using the little heartbeat Doppler to, you know, find her heartbeat. She was having trouble. She was kind of looking in every which possible way direction, but she couldn't get anything, you know, definitive. So she said, you know, hold on here. We're going to go and we'll do an ultrasound. I was like, all right, cool, whatever. So I'm just laying there chilling. She rolls over the ultrasound and she's, you know, using the wand and going this way and that way and pushing. And I'm sorry, ultrasounds are great because you get to see your baby, but they're extremely uncomfortable when they start pressing. So a good 5 minutes, she's sitting there, you know, moving this wand all over my stomach. And I'm getting, you know, I'm like, all right, you know, what's going on? Because they're not showing me anything. Again, didn't really think a whole lot of it. Wasn't getting upset or anything because, you know, they don't always show you at these appointments. It's not really to show you the baby, just to kind of see what's going on. So she said, hold on, she'd be right back. Now, considering she was a technician, she went to go get the doctor. Again, didn't think anything of it because they don't allow technicians in normal ultrasounds to tell you anything about the baby. The doctor has to come take a look at pictures or whatever that they've seen, and then the doctor can tell the patient what's going on. So the doctor comes in to do the ultrasound and she's, you know, same thing as the technician, almost a good 5 minutes. She's moving that wand around, pressing, moving, pressing, moving. And then she puts it down and she's like, I'm sorry, hold on. And she leaves. And then she brings another doctor in. And at this point, I'm like, all right, what, am I in labor? You know, is the cord wrapped around her neck? You know, is there something scary going on? You know, is she malformed? Like, what's happening here? So that doctor comes in and does the exact same thing the first one did and, you know, goes all over with the ultrasound, good 5 minutes, checking. And then, you know, they put it down and both doctors are standing there. And the second doctor turns to me and says, I'm sorry, but there's no heartbeat. At that point, I was in shock. I didn't understand what was going on. I'm like, I remember saying, what do you mean? You know, what are you talking about? She's like, I'm sorry, Miss German, but there's no heartbeat in the baby. We've checked twice and we verified it through myself and, you know, doctor, whatever their name was, but the baby doesn't have a heartbeat. She's gone. And I was in shock at that point. I didn't cry. I just remember, and even now, like my heart's pounding just like it was that day. And the doctor starts talking and she's like, you know, hey, we need to get you up to, you know, labor and delivery. We need to get the baby out, you know, just randomly firing off all these things. And I just kept saying, I got to call my husband. I got to call my husband. I got to call my husband. And they kept reassuring me, oh, you will, blah, 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 you will. So they get me in a wheelchair. They grab my stuff. They take me to a room. I got my phone out, I called my husband, and I started to lose it at that point because it was sinking in why she hadn't been moving, why I didn't feel her the entire day before, why she didn't rejoice at the worship session the night before. So I called my husband and I'm like, babe, I'm like, you got to get to the hospital now. Shit, Jenny's gone. She's gone. There's no heartbeat. She's gone. And I hear my husband screaming on the other side, what do you mean? What do you mean she's gone? What do you mean she's gone? And I'm like, please just get to the hospital. And I remember sitting in that room waiting for him to show up and just praying with everything in me that it wasn't true, that God was going to give me a miracle, that her heartbeat was so weak they just couldn't see it, but she was still in there fighting because, hey, I'd waited 10 years for this little miracle. I'd been through some hell, but I was getting what I finally prayed for. When my husband got there, I lost it at that point. We were just crying and crying and crying. So my regular OB came in and she explained, what the process was. Basically, I was put in a area of labor and delivery specifically for women who were delivering stillborn babies. They do this as a courtesy, and I have to say I am appreciative because I did not want to hear all the other women giving birth to their babies and hearing those cries and the joyfulness. Yeah, I was still in shock. I cried a lot. One of the downsides was that since I'd always had vaginal labors, they wouldn't do a C-section. Part of me kind of wished they did, because instead of doing that, they had to induce labor. And I had to labor 2 days until I was fully dilated, until I could push her out. Our family came to see us. My kids stopped by. I don't think they really understood what was happening. We did tell them, but I don't think it really sunk in. And then, my parents were taking care of them at home. We had 2 pastors. Well, our current pastor at the time came and he prayed. And then we had our current pastor now, our apostle that we follow now, even came and he prayed and he prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And throughout all this, I just kept praying myself, to understand. I kept praying for a miracle, that as soon as she was born, this was all just some crazy mistake. She would be born and then she would start crying, and this would all be some terrible nightmare that I would wake up from. So on April 29th at 5:30-ish in the morning, Genesis Aurora German came into the world and did not take any breath. The moment the doctor told me she was out and I didn't hear her cry, I knew that was it. She really was gone. They didn't show her to me. They took her straight to the baby table to, wash her up and everything. And they just kind of left her there alone. There was no fuss, no muss. It was so quiet. There was no talking. No baby cries. There was no urgency around her. As the doctors were finishing up with the birth and all that, I guess the shock had finally caught up to me, and my whole body was in convulsions, basically. I was shaking so bad that I couldn't hold a cup without spilling it. I couldn't do anything. From head to toe, my entire body just shuddering like I was having a seizure. Thankfully, thank God it wasn't. They asked me if I wanted to hold her, if I wanted anybody to come into the room. My husband and I agreed that we would be the only ones that would see and hold her. So after everything was cleaned up, I realized that if I turned on my side, the shuddering and shaking would subside. And so I turned on my side, and the nurse came over and handed, I say Jenny because that's what my son lovingly nicknamed her instead of Genesis. But the nurse brought Jenny over and handed her to my husband. And I just remember him just staring at her. She was so little. She was the smallest of my babies. He prayed over her, gave her a kiss, and then he put her in my arms. She was so hard, not soft like babies are supposed to be. She was so still, but man, she was a beautiful little thing. She reminds me of when my daughter Kiana was born. Looked just like her. And I held her maybe 10, 15 minutes. I regret that I didn't open the blanket and, count her toes or wrap my finger around her hand. But she just stayed wrapped in that little blanket. And then the nurse came and took her away. And they asked if we wanted pictures done. And at first I was a little hesitant. My husband, he wasn't really feeling it. Who wants pictures of their dead baby? But in the end, I decided, yeah, I did want pictures. So this is my Jenny. It's kind of hard to see, but with the ring. But they did a phenomenal job on her pictures. We had brought an outfit from the house that was going to be her coming home outfit. They took pictures in that. My sister-in-law's mother-in-law, that's a mouthful. She has a tradition that with all of her grandchildren, she made them onesies and then hand-stitched, embroidered on it, personalizing it with, their name or some cute little anecdote. She had made them for Jenny, and the one she's wearing in that photo says Night Night Genesis. I still have her onesies, as well as the last outfit she ever wore. I have all of the pictures. After that, I think I stayed in the hospital for a couple more hours just to make sure that, there was nothing wrong with me and I was, healthy enough that I could go home. And then we packed everything up, and I remember sitting in the wheelchair, being ridden to the car, getting into the car, and I was just numb at that point. Here I was expecting that, my last trip to the hospital, I'd be carrying my little girl home, but I went home alone. When I got home, my family, including my husband, they were so strong and amazing. They made sure I was comfortable if I needed anything. It was incredible. But the hardest thing was when my kids came home from school. I remember I was sitting in the living room on a recliner, and my kids walked in from school, and they're just kind of standing in the living room, just looking around, a little confused. And I remember my daughter looked right at me and she said, "She didn't make it?" And I said, "No, sweetie, I'm so sorry she didn't." And they just came over to me and we just cried there. And I felt so terrible that they had to go through that. It was one thing for me to go through it. I was okay going through it. But to see my kids get so excited about having a sister and to just tear that away from them, it was one of the hardest moments I had to deal with. Over the course of the next few weeks, it was really difficult. I did take my maternity leave for about a month. During that time, I had a pretty crazy panic attack. I didn't even want to be in the house. I just remember screaming, why? Later on, we did find out that the umbilical cord was tightly wrapped around her thigh, and they believed that it cut off the main artery that runs in your leg. And that's what did it. I still look back at, my actions throughout that time, and I wonder, what did I do wrong? Did I stretch too much? And, that would cause the cord to wrap around her. What did I do wrong? I ate right. I took my medicine like I was supposed to. I took care of myself. I went to the doctors. I did everything I was supposed to do. So why did this have to happen? About a month later, I decided that I had to lose the weight. And I went on a very aggressive keto diet and literally dropped all the weight I had gained during pregnancy to the point where it didn't even look like I was pregnant. So probably by like August of that year, I looked back to normal again. Eventually it got easier to where I can talk about it. Only recently have I been able to walk through the children's and baby section of a store. That was really difficult the first couple of months. I say all that because after all that suffering, after all that pain, all the tears, all the crying, after all of that, I finally found peace. And I only found that because God showed me why this happened. The pain is never going to go away. It won't, no matter how much you wish it. It's always there. It's always going to be there. My husband and I have talked extensively about this. And finally, we understand why it happened. Yes, we named her aptly in that she was Genesis. She was the beginning. She was the beginning of what our family would then become once she was gone. She was that catalyst that kick-started our family into the amazing thing that we are now. She brought our family together in a way that we could have never imagined. Specifically me and my husband, there's statistics out there that the loss of a child between a husband and wife more often than not ends in divorce. But in this case, it did the exact opposite for us. God showed us that through this tragedy, through this pain, that we were going to find in each other an intimacy and understanding and love that we would never have been able to touch before. And now I look at it as a blessing because no, I didn't get to hear my baby laugh. I didn't get to hear her cry. I didn't get to see her first steps, her first words, her first teeth, her first boyfriend. But that doesn't mean that I don't love her or that I'll never see her again. It's just now I know that God saved her from all the pain and anguish and things that we have to still deal with down here. He did it to make our family strong. And I know a lot of people that may be watching this video are not going to be able to understand how I could be so calm about this or so understanding or so thankful to God for allowing me this opportunity. But I can 100% say that if it wasn't for God, I would not have made it through all that pain. Because yes, Genesis died, but God stood by me through that whole process. He was in that room when they told me that she didn't have a heartbeat. He was in that room with me while I was hitting more intense contractions. He was in that room with me, holding my hand when I brought her into this world. And he was there when we got her ashes a few days later. And then when we scattered those ashes at the place where we had celebrated her life, he was always there. And knowing that, even feeling him there, is what gave me peace to keep on moving forward. Around that time was when the Lord first put this video series in my heart, because he wants me to share my experiences with others out there, to let them know that this isn't a one-off. You know, it happens, and it's okay to talk about it. But one thing he wants all of us to know is that he never leaves us during these times of pain, of sadness. So I do have 2 scriptures for this video. The first is Isaiah chapter 41, verse 10. And it says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous hand." The meaning of this scripture is to let us know, his children, that we don't need to be afraid of pain, of life, of choices, that no matter what happens, he is walking with us. He is guiding our path, and he is never going to leave us. The second scripture is Isaiah 43, chapter 43, verses 18 and 19. And it says, "Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland." I took that scripture to kind of understand what a new beginning means. Since Genesis was our new beginning, not only did she teach us the strength of going and dealing with loss, but she opened up a new season in our lives. My husband and I now have 2 successful businesses. We have a successful contracting business, as well as a real estate investing business where we flip houses, as well as buying kind of messed up houses, I guess, and remodeling them and then renting them out. And that has been an enormous blessing, and it continues to grow every day. And that's just, one of the small things that he's done in our lives since, Jenny passed. We've been blessed beyond belief. We had bought a house across the street from the country club where we had her baby shower that was abandoned for 20 plus years. And we bought it and flipped it, and now it's a beautiful home. I mean, it's incredible. Of course, we ended up moving out because we had to move to Jersey for my husband's job. But again, up there, we had a beautiful house, big, plenty of room for everyone to come and visit. But there's a ton of little things that have happened since then. Growth that both me and my husband have had since Jenny left us. And all of that has been such a blessing. The growth that I've experienced since then is, I'm not who I was then. I'm so much stronger, so much wiser. I thank God every day for that. So like I said before, this is my last video in this series. I thank you so much for everyone for sticking around and going on this journey with me. I pray for each and every one of you that, during times of difficulty and pain and sadness, and when you feel like you've literally lost all hope and there's just nothing left, look to God, because he is there, and he will reach out to you, and he will hold you in his arms, and he will comfort you, and he will give you direction and love. I always joke with my husband that I never understood why people didn't want to believe in God, because the amazingness and the miracles that he does every single day is just so worth it. So again, if the good Lord puts it on me to do another video series, then I hope you join me for that as well. However, it's been such an amazing journey and blessing to share these videos with you. And I will end this in a prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for those that have had the opportunity to see these videos, Fathers, especially this video. I pray, Father, that you watch over them, that you give them health, peace, and love, Father. I pray that whatever they're going through, that they know that they are enough and that you are there, Father, to keep them up when they are down. Father, I thank you for all this and more, and in your Son's mighty name I pray. Amen. Thanks, everybody, and God bless.